In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the games against Barcelona and Fiorentina, a mid-season review with Mina Rzouki from ESPN FC, this week's Moggi, Frog and Moratti, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Per De Vrij, c'è la torre per Messina, l'ha presa! L'ha ripresa Messina! L'ha ripresa Messina! Il toro! Il toro! Il toro! Il tiro! Samir! Bandanovic! La recupera Brozovic, andiamo in contropiede, la porta è vuota, tira, attenzione, e gol! E gol!
Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter, the last Studio Inter of 2019. Coming to you from a very difficult week, a week where Inter bottled it again. Some would say, myself, I would belong to that group, but we're going to get into all of that. I'm joined by a great panel, as always, the SempreInter.com preview writer and our in-house Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Hey, great to be here. Much less to be positive and optimistic about, though, this week.
That's interesting. We're also joined by our good friend from Florida. He's the host of the Alex Dono Show, Mr. Alex Dono.
I'm happy to be here. And you know it's been a rough week when even Mo is sounding a little bit down. So hopefully we can pick his spirits up.
Yes, that's a good point. And we're also joined by our good friend from the newest addition to the Daily Mail Sports Desk, Mr. Will Beckman.
Good evening. You think you've all had a bad week. Imagine if you lived in the UK as well. Wow.
Yeah, let's not dwell too much on that. But we are also joined for the first time by a very special guest. It's a guest I've been trying to get on the show for quite some time. And who I've been harassing almost on Twitter. I'm really sorry for that. She writes for The Telegraph. She is on ESPN FC, and she's also part of the excellent Serie Awesome podcast. Welcome, making your Studio Inter debut. Welcome, Miss Mina Rzouki. That went well.
You've made me a man now. Hi.
Yeah. Jesus. Sorry. I mean, and then I'm married. Wait,
well, I live in London, so I can feel your pain as well. By the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Let's put it that way. But if we just stick to the football side of things, Mina, the reason why I wanted to invite you on is because we've spoken a lot on Twitter, you and I, about Antonio Conte, and we kind of have a similar view. But that's why I really wanted to bring you on and pick your brains a little bit about how you see Antonio Conte compared to when he was at Juventus to what he's done now at Inter, and also obviously being when he was at Chelsea. I mean, first of all, my first question is: do you see a development of him as a character and as a person in how he takes on his teams and how he builds teams, or do you think that it's the same old Conte and therefore this is headed for the inevitable, crash in about a year's time?
I can't see a huge development, but then I'm not sure that it's entirely necessary. It's funny because, for example, when I do the pod with the Telegraph guys, they're a little bit obsessed with Antonio Conte. They actually confide in me that they think he's the best coach ever, or one of the greatest that they've seen. And I'm always really astounded because, I don't know how to explain it. In England has seen so many great coaches, and and they think Fabio Capello is the worst ever. So okay. He is really good at what he does, but he's only ever really good for a specific amount of time and for a specific job, in my opinion. The real test comes, I guess, not this year, because he's going to have a great first year. The test will come in the latter years when he won't get everything he wants. And then it's about what he can do out of the situation, how he can manage all the competitions, if his style of football evolves. Right now, the style of football is still very much what we've seen him do all the time. It is a little bit of an exhausting style that tends to have an impact. But it's funny because I just feel like he's got so many fans that if you say anything wrong about him, it's like Juve fans are happy to be like, Allegri sucks. And I'm like, I don't understand. The guy won four doubles in a row. You know, he's reached the Champions League final twice and no one cares. But Antonio Conte is like, oh my God, don't touch this man, you know? So I'm not sure why he is so divides opinion, I guess. But for me, like, I'm happy he didn't come back to my club. So how are you guys feeling about having a Juve fan on this
Well, no. I mean, obviously, we try to bring in people from all kinds of perspectives, and obviously, you're a Juve fan, but you're also very good at what you do. So that's why we wanted to bring you on and hear what you think. You're welcome. Will, did you have a question for Mina?
I did. I had a couple actually. One of which is very much related to the discussion you were just having. Firstly, as a Juventus fan, I'm glad I don't have to be the one that outs you, as it were. That's already happened.
I outed myself several times, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say
anyone who follows you on Twitter will know anyway, so,
yeah, exactly.
No, so as number one, as a Juventus fan, how weird is it to see Conte in charge of Juve's biggest rivals? Do you resent him at all for the choice he made in the summer, or are you of the school of thought that everyone's a professional and they should go where the money is and where the offers are? And secondly, obviously Inter had a very disappointing week in the Champions League. I'm sure we'll get onto that more a little bit later, but what do you think Inter should do about the Europa League, given that we've been dropped back into it again? Should we have a serious crack at it? And if we do, and if we should do that, is there the squad depth to get away with that, as it were, without it having a negative impact on the Serie A campaign?
Okay, I'm going to start with that question just because it's the one that I've already forgotten the first one. Basically, I'm having problems with my memory these days. It's an interesting one because there was this discussion on our pod recently as well about whether or not it would have been better to maybe not focus so much energy on Serie A and sort of like try to qualify out of the Champions League group stage because of the money earned. Europa League isn't going to earn that much money, to be honest. What it does give is a lot of experience. But again, I don't think Inter need necessarily that level of experience because you've already got a lot of great players who have played in big matches, who have played in big clubs, maybe not necessarily Lautaro Martinez, but like several others. You know, Lukaku obviously doesn't need the Champions League, Europa League to learn anything. But I think that if you guys are looking to make a statement, then it's better to do so in the Scudetto. I'm personally of the belief that you should try to play every game at the highest level and look to see where you get. The thing is, though, is you need to play a different style of football in order to manage all three competitions, which is why usually you have coaches like Ancelotti who win it, because they're much better at sort of allowing the football to do the work so that the players aren't exhausted. And also, it is squad depth. You know, at the end of the day, it's not really there. And I'm not entirely sure that with the kind of physical strain that the Europa League puts on, and this is the first season under Antonio Pintus, your fitness trainer. He, of course, is the one who was in charge when Zidane came into Real Madrid. And he's amazing. But I do understand that there can be certain problems for people in the beginning because getting used to his methods are a little bit exhaustive as well. So I don't think that you have a choice. Conte is definitely looking to push Juve off their perch, and that's all he cares about. And with the Europa League and the fact that it doesn't bring in that many funds, I can totally understand not doing that. Obviously, I always think you should take every competition seriously, but at the end of the day, the squad is not deep enough. I don't think many squads are deep enough, though. I don't know why it's such a, I do think Roma should take it seriously because, let's be honest, it's going to be difficult for them to manage another trophy for a while. So these are the types of games that you should really go for. As a Juventus fan, I didn't really care if Antonio Conte went to Inter. I know that he was thinking of going to Milan straight after Juve at the time. So, which more than anything, I thought was a little bit strange because Milan had no money. So if you left Juventus because you thought they weren't worth anything more than £10 and they were going for, this expensive trophy in the Champions League, then it was very strange to then make the decision to join Milan. Now, what annoys me a little is that his distaste for Italian football is one of the reasons why I also dislike him. And he was messaging recently with one of my Telegraph colleagues about how upset he is about all the openings in Arsenal and Everton and so on and so forth. And it just seems like he doesn't want to be anywhere unless he can be like, the guy that everyone's talking about. And I think that if the Manchester United job comes along, if he's head of Juve, if he's head of Inter, if he's head of whatever it is, he'll drop it straight away and go running to that job. This is one of the qualities of Conte that I'm not that keen on. He puts himself ahead of everything else. And I understand that because he's a professional and he's a winner and you have to have an ego to do well in this sport. But sometimes I think his ego can be detrimental to his career and what it is that he is actually trying to achieve. Because sometimes just being level-headed and taking your time and not feeling like you need to conquer everything in the first 10 years of your management career might actually take you a lot further.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on what you said there, that he was texting with a colleague of yours in Telegraph that he's annoyed at the Arsenal job being open?
Yeah, he's annoyed that all these job offers have become open in England, which suggests that he would like to have taken one of them.
Yeah, it certainly does. That certainly does. Well, you heard it here on Studio Inter. That's why we wanted Mina the Juventina to come on to break this, to break news
first
like
ever
that.
scoop on the podcast.
Yeah, no.
Oh, is that a scoop? Yeah, well, probably should have left it to the guy to. But I'm sure I don't know. It's like I'm sure that he.
Now you understand why I wanted Mina to on. We're never going to let you go now. I'm going to have you on every week.
Dynamite.
I'm going to have you.
Conte to Everton. Put breaks on the Ancelotti story.
Exactly.
I don't think Everton was the one he wanted. I think that he's annoyed that Spurs was open. And I think for a split second, if it was like Spurs or Arsenal, he'd still want those jobs, Especially, imagine Conte at Arsenal. You feel like he really would be the man to revive them.
With Mourinho at Spurs.
Mourinho at Spurs. I was just going to say that. Oh, my God. I mean, pop the popcorn, Mina. I'm coming over. Let's watch this.
Yeah. Guys, let him go for the sake of, our entertainment.
I mean, just the entertainment value alone. I mean, Jesus. Yeah, that would be something else. Right. Mo, did you have a question for Mina?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a pretty snarky question prepared prior to yesterday's result, and it was. I mean, I can still ask it. It's just, it's glass houses now sort of position. But what would upset you more as a Juventina? Losing the Scudetto to Conte or getting knocked out of the Champions League by Mourinho's Tottenham?
And also, thank you for coming on.
Yes, exactly.
Look, I mean, look, it's clear. It's clear that had we been sitting on top of the table, it would have been a much meaner question to ask. But now, now that we're joint top in second place, it's I think it's a safer question to pose to our wonderful guest.
Okay, it's really weird. I sometimes have a soft spot for certain teams, and I don't actually dislike Inter. A lot of the times I cheer you guys on. I don't know why. I'm a very bad fan in that sense. I've several times cheered on Torino in the derby because someone would have said a horrible comment to them about them not being, worthy challengers, and I'll be like, "Come on, Torino!" And I'll get like. So I'm not necessarily one of those people. I dislike Conte for several reasons. So him winning, it would be a little bit painful, but not because he's with Inter, just to him winning in general is just a little bit painful, even if it was Chelsea. Because I feel like his philosophy is winning. And that's the kind of philosophy that I don't necessarily want to be out there. Does that make sense? I feel like he goes against the stuff that I believe in. So for that reason, I'm not a fan of his. With Mourinho, I'm a very big fan of his. I think he's an amazing coach. He's not always shown that. Let's just say at Manchester United at moments, although that's a difficult club to really take anywhere these days. But I'm fine with Mourinho knocking us out. I'm fine with all of that. That doesn't create a problem with me. But for Conte, I feel like what it is that he stands for is not necessarily what I agree with. And so, listen, I'll be honest. I was offered the chance to write his like a book on him, but firstly, there was no point because I dislike him, and I think I've made it so obvious at this point that I feel like he hates me as well. So, it would have been a really bad book. It would have just like, so I
You
was
see,
like,
now I want you to write that book.
it just would have been like chaos between us. And so I'm
Who was
like,
the journalist who wrote that book on Mourinho with all those nasty anecdotes? Would have been like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have definitely been like that. It would have just been like,
Spanish journalist.
Oh my god,
So-
I would definitely have bought that. You and Antonio's like basically going at each other in written form is.
Yeah, I
that's
want to do like
the thing that I
Allegri's.
thought it is. Yeah, I
Like,
understand.
he's like, honestly, I'm like so in love with him, and I just feel like if you get him on board, you'll do so well.
May I ask you where your distaste for Conte came from? Was it after he left, or was it during his tenure at Juventus, or when did this sort of distaste for him as a character develop? Just asking for a friend,
Probably during I think it was as a player as well. I wasn't like a huge fan of his. I do like battlers, like, I am fond of the Arturo Vidal type of players, don't get me wrong, and Conte was very good at sort of making the most of his inadequacies, but there were just so many things that he did. Like, there was just a Champions League game that we had against Real Madrid, for example, and the way that he was talking to Cuadrado, he was shouting at him from the sidelines, telling him how to defend against Ronaldo. And Cuadrado was trying so hard to listen that he basically just let Ronaldo, go past him. And I'm like, stop trying to control everything. Just let these guys, like, trust them. But he always thinks he knows better. And he's always like about, you're not giving me the chance to shine. You're not giving me the players to do this wonderful job, And it's always like this whole sympathy thing where, like, no one gets that he's so talented and we're just simply not providing him with the Messis and Ronaldos he needs to win the trophies that he desires. And he's never been somebody who'll just be like, okay, let's sit down and let's try to figure out, where am I going wrong? Tell me where he just refuses to understand where it is that he might not be the greatest. And he always feels hard done by. And you could see that all the time.
I mean, what did you say? I mean, to me, that suggests that he reminds me a bit like Mazzarri in the sense that kind of antipatia. You know what I mean? The antipatia. It's never my fault, and he's very grumpy, and he looks like the world has got a chip on his shoulder, and the world owes him something. I can see where you're coming from with that. Only the difference being that Mazzarri is mediocre at best, and then Conte is really good at what he does.
And Conte can win when it rains.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he can win when it rains, and also he doesn't start. Have you guys seen that when he's blaming diarrhea? That is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. When he's coach of Regina and they've lost to Napoli, and in the post-match in live, I think it's with Rai, where he's blaming that the players had diarrhea and that's why they lost. It's comedy gold. Oh, he's unbelievable. It's never Walter's fault.
Do you think he's the most disliked coach, Walter Mazzarri?
Well, it has to be, and he's brought it all on himself. I've never seen. I remember that season when he was at Inter, and I was at a press conference. I think it was a pre-derby press conference, and when he walks through the room, when he walked in the room, it was as if, he sucked all the energy out of it. It's like the entire mood of the room just dropped. Because he's such a grumpy human being and angry, and he's not happy. He doesn't like life, and he doesn't like people, and I don't know what his problem is. I can't stand the man. I really can't stand Mazzarri. I could respect the result and the work, but as a person, I think he's just, for all those Harry Potter fans, I'd say he's a dementor. He sucks the life out of a room by just walking into it. Like
You and Gab would really get along.
Really, yeah, we do get along, actually.
Gab really hates Mazzarri.
Yeah, I know. I know that. We don't like that. No, we're not. Yeah.
But does that mean that this weekend you had Nima's worst double combination ever? You had Mazzarri at the Bentegodi for Verona Torino, your least favourite stadium.
Yeah, that's
been the unhappiest place in the world.
Is that your least favourite stadium?
Oh my god, it's basically Mordor. It's Stadio Mordor. It's basically what it is. Oh, come on, me. First of all, I mean, I went there with an open mind. First of all, it's in horrible Verona, and then second of all, you go in there and. I mean, sorry, but wanted to buy a beer at halftime. There's a woman that I think used to work as a stripper, about 30 years ago in the same clothes she wore when she was a stripper, putting money into her bra. When I went, there was no cash register. Beers were being. It was just horrible experience, and everyone, it was just. I just wanted to leave. It was literally for me. It was raining, and it was. Oh no, it was.
It's
always
worse
raining.
in the summer. They
Yeah,
don't have AC in the press room, and you want to commit suicide.
yeah. No, it's basically where happiness goes to die. That's Stadio Mordor, and Mazzarri there. That just accentuates that. Alex, did you have a question for Mina?
Sure, and you'll have to forgive me, everyone, because with where this conversation has gone, it's really going to feel like we're piling on Antonio Conte. But I did, Mina, I did want your opinion because, Inter's exit from Champions League is certainly a reminder that Conte has the reputation for being a great domestic manager, but, struggling in Europe. And there's evidence on both sides, certainly, to back that up. So, in your opinion, what is it about Conte in Europe? Is it formation? Is it his mentality? What has held him back there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, I would have thought that at the time that playing such exhaustive tactics meant that it was always going to be complicated to try to win domestically as well as internationally. I don't know whether to a certain extent he's been unlucky in that he hasn't presided over a squad that's full of all this talents that he thinks he can win with. And that he did come into, let's say, the last game of the group stage without, honestly, a midfield in many ways. There's always an excuse for him, like in Galatasaray, like it was against Galatasaray for Juventus when they got knocked out because, it was raining and it was this mess and Mancini had arrived and all of a sudden Juve were out. There's always this massive reason why he just never makes it or doesn't do enough. But I think the truth is that he's yet to really figure out how to play against quality. His type of football has always been a little bit vertical, which is, to be honest, it's how Real Madrid have won 3 Champions League trophies in a row. But there's this element of it that just bypasses quality. It's a lot more about energy. Conte's sort of philosophy is about eradicating or at least neutralizing weaknesses. So it's like, okay, let's see, what are you not very good at? You can substitute that with a lot of intensity, a lot of pace, a lot of running. Because as a midfielder, he wasn't great. He wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the most technically gifted. So in order to be a very good player or try to be the captain of Juventus at the time, surrounded by excellent players, was to just give more heart, to be that guy, to battle. And he sort of thinks that that's the solution to everything. But then you come up against teams who have quality, who know how to hold, who know how to go into the right spaces, receive the ball, and dominate the midfield. And then he doesn't really have the answers. And this is what we saw even on a domestic level at the time with Juventus. For example, playing against teams like Fiorentina, who would come back and score 3 goals in 6 minutes against us because it was like he doesn't know how to cope with this type of thing. So it's always bullying. Let's harass them. Let's run faster than them. Let's keep trying to let's take the weaknesses that we have and convert it into intensity. And that's always a solution to stuff. And it works for a while, but eventually you do need the quality. And I think this is where you go to sort of the masters of coaching and the ones who do win stuff, like your Ancelotti's, like your Peps, where it is about quality and less about intensity. When Pep Guardiola tries to diss you, the first thing he says is it's a very athletic team, i.e. that, you guys are, that's what he used to describe Real Madrid as under Jose Mourinho. It was an athletic players, athletes against basically his quality. And he used to think it was, he was like, oh no, I'm just being polite, but he's not being polite. He's using it as a way of saying you're not good enough, you don't have the quality. And I think that what he does a lot of the time, Antonio Conte, is because he's relying on these things, he doesn't actually know how to get the best out of the players he has. So it's more like, okay, I need you to run faster. I need you to press closer. I need you to be there at the right times, which is why he can work with players like Arturo Vidal. When Vidal was at Juventus, he was one of the best players that they had. And he was such a soldier, like Bonucci, really was bewitched by Antonio Conte. Allegri came along and he honestly had no idea how to work with Vidal. He was just like, this is not the player for me. You can get rid of him if you like. Because there were basic instructions that he would need him to do. Like, okay, I need you here to be calmer. Just take the ball and pass laterally. Don't think about anything else. And Vidal would be so intent on being the hero that it just didn't work with his philosophy. He wants to fight. He wants to be the man, and so there was a clash of cultures. Because what Allegri was trying to get them to do was act like act like a champions win, a team capable of winning something more than just the Scudetto. And so at times you need to know when to push the accelerator and when to take it off, when to take your foot off the gas, and just learn to manage and control the game as well as your energy levels. And so it was amazing to see how much quality he got out of certain different players, how much Tevez went up a notch under his control. Whereas what Allegri wanted him to do was sort of be the hero, get the goals, shoot from distance, go for it. And this is where I think that when you come up against teams like Barcelona who can just keep passing the ball and control it, it becomes a lot more difficult. And this is why I'm critical of Antonio Conte, and I get a lot of flack for it, actually. Because even, forget Champions League and forget the fact that, as soon as Barcelona turned it on, Inter suffered. As soon as Borussia Dortmund turned it on, Inter suffered. It's also just, in the domestic games, you could see, like, Fiorentina aren't even a very good team, but they do there is this element of, unless you can bully the opponent, I'm not sure what else there is to do. And even by the choices of men that he likes to go for pace. He wanted Theo Walcott desperately for Juventus at the time. He desperately wanted Lukaku more than anyone else. And it's like, even what he wants is always, this physicality, the ability to bully Arturo Vidal, those types of midfielders, more than he wants somebody who'll just be like, I'm going to keep the ball and dictate the tempo. And he was very good with Andrea Pirlo. So I don't want to say that he's not a very good coach to great talent, but I do think that you have to... He doesn't necessarily know how to bring out the best in the good players. More often than not, turns them into soldiers. And when you have soldiers, they can't think for themselves. So in the big moments, unless you're there to control them, they won't know what to do. And that's what happened with Cuadrado against Real Madrid in the Champions League. It's what happened with certain others, because unless you're there to control every detail, they're going to get it wrong. So the key to it is to teach them enough and trust your teaching that they know what to do when the situation changes on the pitch.
That's a really interesting point. A really interesting analysis. I wanted to just quickly, before we let you go, I wanted to just ask you, we do this to every guest that comes on, and I wanted to ask you to say your top 6 from 6 to 1 in the Serie A.
What, like, what do you mean? Like, who I think should be top 6, or who?
No, how you think this season will finish, from 6 to 1?
Oh, from 6 to 1. Oh, hold on. I have to think of the top 4, and then I have to think the top 2. I do. Okay, from 6.
Yeah, it's the European places, basically.
Napoli.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, no. Do I put Cagliari in there or not? I don't know what to do. Can I start from 1?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Juventus, Inter. Lazio, Atalanta. Roma, Napoli.
Okay. Who do you think will win the Coppa Italia?
Inter.
Ooh. What about Capocannoniere? Will it be Ciro Immobile or will it be Cristiano?
I hope it's Ciro Immobile. I mean, he's such a nice guy, right? Yeah. Did you guys see what he did when giving away the goals basically to his teammates and being like, Luis Abel, it's your turn. He spurns chances for hat tricks. He's such a good guy. So I'd like him to win it. I know Ronaldo is desperate for it. So
he's really desperate for that.
I feel like he might commit suicide. But
no, it's literally what I think as well. Like when I was watching yesterday Juve against Udinese, like every time he didn't score, he looked like he wanted to die on the spot, because he knows these are the games he has to score like 4 goals to be able to catch up Ciro.
So true.
What do you think of the Supercoppa? Do you think Simone will win that one against Sarri, or do you think Sarri will win that one against Simone?
Oh, that's an interesting one. It depends whether or not Sarri's learned his lessons. If we're going to go again with this, it's very strange. They brought on Sarri because it's like, oh, Allegri's so defensively cautious and, it's so boring. But it's still pretty much boring. And the guy is still unwilling to play the trident, except against Udinese or, here and there for a few minutes. I mean, let's be honest, it's Bayer Leverkusen. It's not like I'm not a big fan of the Bundesliga, if I'm honest. And they're being run by Peter Bosz. He's like the worst coach. So... To have only brought him on at the end was really bizarre. Like I wanted that Trident to start in all the matches, but anyway.
Agreed.
If he does do that, I think they obviously have the power to defeat Lazio. But if he wants to play with Bernardeschi or some Aaron Ramsey or Rabiot or whatever it is, then no. Like, this is where I'm jealous of Inter, because you have such a nice midfield when it is healthy in comparison.
Yeah, when it's healthy.
When the last time it was healthy was about 1973, I think. Feels like it. I don't remember.
Do you guys think you're going to win?
No, I have Inter.
We'll get onto this, but no.
Yeah, no way.
Why?
I think because Inter aren't good enough.
Look at the midfield from last night.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, our backup is Borja Valero and Matías Vecino, and
the next backup after him is Conte himself. So,
listen, guys, we have 15 midfielders and none of them are available. Like, we have literally bought everyone you can imagine, and Matuidi was playing left back, so it really is no guarantee at this point. No, they'll be ready, in January.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think Stefano Sensi is Inter's Ming Vase. He's pretty to look at, but you can only have him out once every 2 months, and that's something that's been true throughout his career. He plays 30-35 games. Now he's been out for 2 months, and with Pintus and Conte, you don't want to have an elephant near your Ming vase, and I think those two are the elephants near your Ming vase. So I don't see. I think there needs to be substantial. They need to strengthen. To me, Kulusevski is the ultimate Conte player. He never stops running. He's good he goes against goal. He's energy. Everything you just said. A soldier. That's who he is. I personally want him and Tonali, but that's not going to happen this January. So I just don't think that Inter have the quality and the depth that Juve have, and that's why I think win the Serie A. I think that speaks in his favor.
You trust Sarri?
I trust Sarri. Yes, I mean I think this notion of Sarri. Yes, he's very un-Juve. He's not who I think when I think of Juventus. But he does have. I mean the guy is. I mean it's clear that. The European football, those who want to win the Champions League are won by the ideologues, at least if you want to look at those who have won recently. And so Juve decided to go with their ideologue, but an Italian version of that. And so they went with Sarri. There was no other, if you think that Allegri is too pragmatic and you want an ideologue, then who else do you go when Pep isn't available? You go for Sarri. So I can understand that.
You know what it is? It's not even about Sarri. If Inter win it, and I do think they have a really good chance of winning it, it won't be because of Antonio Conte only. It will be because you have Beppe Marotta. And
Agreed.
He's already changed the guy, the head of nutrition. He has put in all the right, cogs in the right places. He is really the guy who makes a difference. And I wish he was at Juventus to pull the strings, because he wouldn't have let what happened over the summer happen. And I think that what you have in Paratici and Nedved are people who are obsessed with what is like shiny, like, ooh, the big players, the ones that deserve a lot of money. Ooh, Sarri plays nice football. Let's bring him in. It doesn't matter that we don't have a midfield that knows how to keep the ball except for Pjanic. Let's put him anyway. But Marotta, I feel like, understands how to bring in and who to bring in and how to do the balance. And he does all these interviews that are based more about character than they are about just talent. And that's what makes me believe that Inter have a chance, because I'm not sure that management with Nedved is really the right thing to do at the moment. I mean, already they're bleeding money because of the way that they've spent their money. I mean, Aaron Ramsey on a contract in which the guy's never going to leave the infirmary. So stuff like that makes me angry. But I mean, and Zhang, I think, is a really good owner. He just sort of lets everyone get on with it. That you're making a lot of money in revenue commercially. You're doing well as well. Yeah. So I mean, these reasons.
I agree. I think Inter, Suning are the best thing that have happened to Inter since the treble. And I think they've just completely, in just 3-4 years, they've turned everything around. So I couldn't agree with you more there. Before we let you go, if people want to follow you on Twitter, what's your handle? And also, have you got something you want to plug coming up that people should be on the lookout for?
No. Do I have anything to plug? No.
You've got an extra. No, you have a brilliant podcast with Gab and.
Oh yeah, listen to that if you like it. Most of the time,
you've got to put You got a book to write now as well.
Yes,
On Antonio Conte.
No, I really want to write one on Allegri. I'm just trying to figure out how I can convince him to let me do that. What
I
is
think
there?
I think there should be like a reality show where you and Antonio Conte, like, get me a celebrity, get me out of here, I'm a celebrity. You and Antonio Conte on an island trying to work things out. It would be hilarious.
Yeah, can you imagine? Oh God. I don't think I'm that important to him. But
I think it's just the fact to see you get under his skin, because I think it is funny when he gets annoyed, because he looks like a really angry, petulant child when he gets angry, and I find that rather amusing. Sorry.
Are you going to discuss what happened over the weekend with the cancelling the press conference?
Yeah, we are. I wanted to hear your give us your thoughts about that.
No, I just feel like it's typical Conte, right? Like I don't really have much to say about it. I do feel sorry for him a lot of the time, because he does get awfully, like, he does really have like a lot of people who seem to hate him. But I mean,
you included.
Yeah, but it's not a personal thing. It's just, this is what I mean by the philosophy of football. I think a really good coach sort of lets the players take the credit, but Antonio Conte is like, it's me, I did all of this for you. And so this is what is so annoying for me when you watch him. Also, as a player, when I was saying that I didn't like him as well, it was that game that Juventus played against Lecce, and he celebrated like he won the World Cup when he scored a goal against his hometown.
Yeah,
I thought that was really bizarre at the time.
Yeah.
You support a guy because he's got the right human values, like Duncan Ferguson, what he did to Moise Kean. It just made me like, ugh,
That's disgusting. That is the most disgusting. I mean, you don't do that to a 19-year-old, and there was no need for it as well. I thought it was absolutely, but I think that career is being saved by Carletto going to Everton. I never thought I'd be saying that sentence in my life, but I mean, it is upside down world. In more ways.
It really is.
It really is. So yeah, thank you so much. And if people want to follow you, it's at
Mina Rzouki.
Yeah, Mina Rzouki, that's the one. Thank you so much, Mina, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It was ours. To talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ciao. Right, that was the lovely Mina Rzouki. They should definitely follow her on Twitter. She's absolutely awesome. She writes really well, and that Serie A podcast with Nicky Bandini and also Gab Marcotti, another good friend of our show, is really, really worth listening to. It's a good conversation. Right, I thought we should talk about the elephant in the room, the Barcelona and the Fiorentina games, because my perception on that is that it was pretty much the same thing that happened in both those games. Inter create chances, Inter build towards something but fail to finish it off, and then get caught out when they're pushing. They get caught out because they are unable to finish games off and to bury the game and to kill the game off, basically. But I have a question for you guys, and I wanted to kind of just leave this out, and I wanted to start with you, Mo. Is this the annual December depression that is, or is this the Conte's Inter's version of it? What do you think?
Well, I feel pretty depressed, so I don't know, and it's December, so I don't know.
You live in Dubai. What on earth have you? What, the sun is too shiny?
No,
for you?
three winless games is pretty awful. Considering purely from a footballing perspective, the Barca game. The Barca game was unwatchable. I think it really was the worst performance of the squad this season, albeit understandable to a degree, because of like Mina had earlier noted very graciously, we went into the game without a midfield, even less so against Fiorentina. So despite it being baby Barca and it being at the San Siro, etc., what was clear is with Spalletti's midfield, you get Spalletti's Inter, and this is exactly what we saw in both matches. There was a lack of intensity and belief, and the lack of, like you said, an ability to kill off the match, which of course is not the midfielder's fault, because Lukaku and Lautaro both had amazing chances, whether against Roma, against Barcelona, and yesterday, certainly Lukaku, or the day before yesterday, Lukaku against Fiorentina. So the attackers didn't kill off the game, but also you have to remember that with our full strength midfield, so many chances were being created and finished off by midfielders. So the onus and the burden of scoring goals didn't fall onto these two guys only when you had the quality, but with Valero, I mean, despite him scoring a goal yesterday, and a very nice goal for that, with Valero, Vecino, ridiculously fatigued
Brozovic, poor guy.
Completely run into the ground. D'Ambrosio and Biraghi, you're not going to get goals out of these five guys. It's just not going to happen. And you're playing at the Franchi, not at the Friuli, like I said last week. But you're playing at the Franchi. It's difficult. It's a tough match. There's a ton of pressure. You've already gone two games without winning, so it's understandable. But it's also clear that there has been an extremely high step in quality in terms of the people that the management has brought in, and we're feeling the effects of these guys not being able to make it to the pitch. Is this the traditional December coma? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I can't wait for the Genoa game, and I can't wait for the Christmas or the winter break to come even more. But then again, how many times have we said that in the last few years? I remember the first Mancini, the first Mancini season back, and then the Spalletti seasons. It seems like we always hobble into the Christmas break on crutches, and I don't know. Like I said, like we both said, we're not going to believe until it's April. So anything can happen till then. I would be surprised.
Well, what do you make of this, Will? Is this the December blues again?
I think that the Genoa match will give us a much clearer indication of that, because these are matches which can happen. They're results that can happen. They weren't bad performances necessarily, given the players that were out there. So I don't think there's necessarily a mental lapse that is taking place. If we were to play against a team that's fighting for relegation and put in a poor performance and find a way to not win it, then that would become 4 games without a win. That would be the first game against a very modest opposition that hadn't been won, and then we'd have 2 weeks to reflect on it. And at that point, things could become very juicy, considering that the first 2 matches after the winter break are Napoli and Atalanta. So at that point, there would be a bit of a panic on, possibly. I think that is almost that's the next big question. We missed our first opportunity to improve or to make a big leap by not getting through the Champions League group. But the next challenge, as it were, is to avoid this January collapse, which has besieged us in 3 of the last 4 seasons. That's the next way, I think, to judge Conte's work and how much he's brought this group of players on. So I don't honestly feel we have the answer to that yet.
What are your thoughts, Alex?
Certainly there's December blues, and I have to give Inter a lot of credit because every December they find new and innovative ways to disappoint me when disappointment should not even really exist. And what I mean by that is, if you told me, months ago, right after the Champions League draw, that Inter would come in 3rd place in a group, with Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund, I would have said, yeah, that doesn't sound crazy. I could see that happening. But it's the way they go about failing to qualify that always makes it interesting when, you get to the final match day in the group stage, needing a victory or at least to match Dortmund's result to get through, and you fall to Barcelona's B team. But I can't say this more emphatically that to me, that final match is not really to blame, because I have so much more regret for, the disappointing draw against Slavia Prague at home, for the way they bottled the lead at Barcelona, the way they bottled the 2-0 lead at Dortmund. Like it wasn't even so much to me about the final Barcelona game against the B team, because they certainly did create more chances than they conceded in that game. So you consider the midfield, you consider how tired the attackers are. I could understand that happening. It's more, the way that they went about bottling the Champions League group stage, which is disappointing. But as far as, the way Inter is playing and, the disappointment against Fiorentina. Anytime a team equalizes in injury time, it's going to be a major letdown. But I agree with Will that the Genoa match is going to be very telling, and I agree with most of what Mo said as well. And I mean, guys, the way that I look at it is, yeah, it's unfortunate the timing of Inter always going through stuff like this in December, but it's understandable given the state of the midfield. Given and Brozovic could really use an ice bath. I know that at this point Lautaro and Lukaku could really use ice baths. Like the winter break.
He's suspended.
That's true. That's a great point. Which is another thing that's going to make it tough against Genoa because Brozo and Lautaro won't even be available in that match thanks to those yellow cards. But honestly, these performances, given the thinness of the squad and the state of those who have to get on the pitch 7 times in the last 25 days. Like I know it's always disappointing to lose like you did against Barcelona or to draw against Roma where you had created more chances than against Fiorentina where you created more chances. But guys, if I think about this pragmatically, these results really aren't too surprising, and we just need to have a good January mercato, and we need to get some of these bodies healthy who aren't healthy right now, and I think the situation will work itself out.
Yeah, I think if you're going to make a list of reasons why Inter have dropped points, that there's no getting away from the fact that this squad is a little bit ravaged at the moment. In previous years, I don't remember there being injury issues like this when the bad results have come. It's been a mental dip. I think it would be too harsh to blame this on some kind of mental lapse or some kind of inability to sustain good form for more than 3 months, because it was obvious, and the worst part of the injury crisis coincided with the toughest run of matches. So, exactly. It's too early to say that. We will find that out, and if it happens again, then we'll have to talk about it. But at the moment, I don't think we're at that point.
And also we have to, as Alex alluded to, and I think you did as well a little bit, is that look. Yes, Inter can disappoint us because they're Inter, and that's what they do. But at the end of the day, if we look at this from if we zoom out and look at this from a broader perspective, Inter are on the same points as Juventus 16 games into the season with 1 game left against Genoa. If they win that game, they're at level points with Juventus after almost half the season. That's amazing. I did not expect that. They have a defense which is the best in the league. They've only conceded 14 goals. They haven't scored as much, but they're third in that. So in my opinion, I think this is still it was a disappointment not to go through from the Champions League. Fair enough. All of that is true, but I think it would be very unfair given the injury situation and the crisis that he has had to deal with, Conte. I think it would be unfair to not give them. To give him the benefit of the doubt and call this the December angst or depression, December depression or whatever. But one thing is definitely clear, and that is that Stefano Senselli, Nicola Barella, Gagliardini, Asamoah, Candreva, all of these players won't be back for that game against Napoli after the Christmas break, and then you have Atalanta immediately after that. January is going to be hectic. And Inter need to sign players quickly, even if it's on loan or whatever. But they need to get these things done ASAP, because I think, to be perfectly honest, he's kind of already overperformed a little bit given the circumstances.
Without doubt.
And I think it would be very you can't count on him doing that time and time again. So no, I think it's I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, we're going to get into it now. When we think about the Genoa game, I think Inter will go into that game, and I think Inter will win it. Mainly because I think Genoa are so bad. They are not good enough to be able to withhold the pressure, and I think this is one of those games where Sebastiano Esposito or Politano will score if they play next to Lukaku. I'm hoping it's Esposito, because I think he deserves a start. I think he's earned it. But I think Inter will win this game 2-0. And I think that Esposito will score, and I think Lukaku will score, and we'll go into a harmonious Christmas period. Does Mystic Positive Mo agree with me, or is Mystic Mo in a negative feeling a bit negative about that?
Mystic Mo predicted a 3-0 win against Fiorentina. So Mystic Mo's bearings just keep on getting further and further away. Like, soon enough, I'm going to be like so mysterious. Like, how is this guy predicting things so badly? That's what's going to be mystic about me,
Well, as long as we can keep calling you Mystic Mo, I'm happy.
Look,
so what do you think?
As a man from an Eastern background, mysticism just runs through my veins. So I'm happy to be called that anyway.
Okay.
No, but I digress. No, I think you're quite right. I think the Genoa game, I think everything being said about the decimated midfield, etc. I think even if players have to play out of position, I mean, there is a chance that Asamoah is back, correct? If I'm not mistaken, Asamoah, maybe even Gagliardini. So
and Candreva, from what I'm hearing as well.
Yeah. So I mean, look, even with the 11 men who played yesterday, should no one had been suspended and them being at the same level of fatigue, go out against Genoa, I think it's a straightforward affair. So I think it's going to be a pretty underwhelming win, but a win nonetheless. A very important win, a much needed win, and we're going to need every last bit of the 3 points before we go into the break. Like you said, it's not like January is going to roll in and then it's all fun and games and rainbows and unicorns. It's a tough games, probably without the 2-star midfielder still. So it's not a walk in the park. So I think we're going to win. I hope that, like you said, I hope it's Esposito. I hope he gets a goal. I hope Lukaku gets a goal just to shut everyone up a bit.
Yes.
And maybe it's a nice 2-0 straightforward, unspectacular win.
I'll take that. Will, what do you say? What do you predict?
Yeah, my vision for this match is pretty similar. There is a bit of bitterness in thinking that the guy who's going to be managing against us is probably still serviceable for our midfield in this current state. Thiago Motta in that midfield. But yeah, I think 2-0 sounds realistic. I am very interested to see who he picks, Conte, because if he were to pick Esposito alongside Lukaku, I think the rumours surrounding Politano's future would increase ahead of the January window, because he has given an impression that he's not really the biggest fan of Politano, and Politano didn't exactly come on very well against Barcelona last week, to put it mildly. So,
or Fiorentina, or every other time he's
but he's not playing well, is he? And I think that's probably partially the result of the fact that he doesn't really feel that the coach has got much confidence in him. So at this point, if he's ignored in favour of admittedly a very good 17-year-old, but a 17-year-old nonetheless, I think him and his agent might start asking some questions over the next few weeks. But no, I think that this will be a fairly ugly but necessary and much needed win, and I hope so, because while we were talking over the last few minutes, I've just been thinking about what's been happening over the last few years, and the match before Christmas is always nasty, because I know this because I know that on Christmas Day every year for the last 4 or 5, I've had a bit of a frown thinking about what's just happened. Last year we conceded a stoppage time equaliser to Chievo at the Bentegodi. 2 years before that, we lost to Sassuolo with a missed penalty. You had the defeat against Lazio with Felipe Melo doing his kung fu kick a couple of years before that.
I was there at the stadium.
There's always something quite unpleasant. So I hope there's no nasty surprise in store.
Let's kill that tradition. Alex, where are you on this game, prediction-wise?
I just hope I can eat my panettone in peace on Christmas. I think Inter wins the match. I think they make it a little bit more difficult than it has to be. I would love, I hear you guys talking about maybe 2-0. I would love that. I'm thinking more 1-0 with the Lukaku goal, but I think they get it done so I can enjoy my Christmas. But, maybe my pre-Christmas will be a little bit rocky, but I think they get it done.
I mean, if there ever was a vacancy for the role of patron saint of panettone, it would be you.
I love it.
Yes.
And also, guys, I'm so vocal about my love for panettone because
that's what I mean.
In the USA, it's not very, like, a lot of people, and it's funny because every grocery store there's a ton of them. Like there's huge display cases of panettone, yet I can't tell you how many people I talk to that don't know what it is. They don't understand it. I try and preach the panettone gospel because it's a relatively new thing in the USA.
At Alex Dono, if you want to know about panettone, believe me, you will.
My son loves panettone, by the way. He's not even 2
does,
years old. He loves it.
Does he have a choice? I mean, did he Inter and panettone? That's pretty much
that is fair. That is fair. But he is a very picky eater. He calls the panettone, he calls it a big muffin, and he eats it happily.
And that is what it is, basically. It's delicious. I think it's a giant muffin. It's a giant cupcake. Right. Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something in the world of football heavily, starting with the negativity. This week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. Alex Dono.
Well, once again, guys, Serie A finds a way a difficult situation and makes it a lot worse than it should be. So I think a lot of us have probably seen this, but Serie A's new anti-racism campaign, keeping in mind that it's a huge problem in Italian stadiums, the racist monkey chants. So how does Serie A combat this? With posters of monkey faces. And if you hear from the artist who they commissioned for these posters, who, by the way, only paints monkey faces, that's his specialty, went on and on about how, he needs people to see that we are all monkeys. So you take the racism out of the term. Bottom line, guys, it's outrageous to understand just how short-sighted, how far-sighted Serie A is with this problem, how little understanding they have of how to fix this, when their way of purportedly combating racism is to create posters of monkey faces. Like, it's insulting, and you see the way now the league is being covered, because this is being covered in news stations all over the world. Unfortunately, with stuff like this, like, they need to bring in a PR team from outside or something, because everything they try to do to address this situation just seems to make it worse than it was before.
Yeah, and that's the weird part about this. The most disturbing part about this is after the Black Friday front page, and it's the same thing here. They just don't get it. They think that they did something good here, and that they were going to get pats on the back. Instead, you have black players outraged and pissed off. You have everyone in the world wondering if this is a joke, if this is a big practical joke. I mean, it's just, I'm at this point, there's nothing more to add, and it's the fact that the people running the Serie A are people of a certain age and a certain socioeconomical class that have never been outside and see how things are perceived outside of the little bubble they live in. And that's what's so sad about all this, because there is, of course, anyone with half a brain knows that the Serie A aren't being racist by doing this. Okay, I mean, this is their anti-racism campaign, for crying out loud. They thought this was a good idea to show that if one is a monkey, everyone's a monkey, and that's the end of that discussion. Only it's not, because things aren't. This isn't 1955. It's things evolve, things have meaning, and if you want to address an issue of monkey chanting, you don't put up a poster of people looking like monkeys. It makes no sense to me. It just makes no sense, and there's no need. I mean, I saw a tweet that I absolutely loved. It was saying basically that when they wanted to stop, when the Serie A wanted to stop. The Serie A had, I'm going to quote it here, I got it now. It's Pablito, at Ilcano in Event 22. He says, the Serie A had no problem getting out a straight message when they made illegal streaming a priority, but they keep struggling to reach a wider audience for the anti-racism message. Stop and think of the reason why. And that's absolutely true. There's no need to go to jump through all these hoops when you're trying to make a campaign about racism. There was no need for this. This is such a big own goal. And I feel, and a part of me feels bad for them because they thought they did something good, and instead this just explodes in their face this went down like a lead balloon, and it's like it's time for them to bring in someone from outside of the bubble. The same people they've been working with for 100 years. Bring in someone else to kind of help you, like Alex said, about how things are perceived, especially when you're trying to market the league outside of Italy.
Yeah, and Nima, when I first saw this, one of the first things I did was I sent you a message because I thought it might be a joke. Because I wanted to make sure that before I read further into the story, I wanted to make sure this wasn't someone just trolling and making this up. I couldn't believe it was real.
No, exactly, and it's that's exactly it. And I saw a really good tweet from a Gazzetta dello Sport Spain correspondent, Filippo Ricci, who said that in Italy everyone thinks that this is an anti-racism campaign. Outside of Italy, everyone is scratching their heads, wondering if their eyes are deceiving them. Like this is where they are as a country, and I think there is racism in Italy, but this is not an instance of that. This is just ignorance. This is ignorance of the bubble. They live in their own bubble, and they need to come out of the bubble, and otherwise they're just going to keep making these own goals. And it's sad because we all love the league and we all love the football and Inter, of course. So it's just sad. It's just sad. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Will Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yes, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to UK politics for this week's Frog because football didn't offer me anything particularly interesting. Boris Johnson is the Frog of the Week, which sounds a little odd given that he's just become the Prime Minister with a nice majority. But before that, he gave us a marvellous moment on Good Morning Britain, a TV show on ITV here in the UK, where in order to duck an interview from the ITV reporter who came to ask for an interview in a fairly sort of polite way, he hid in a fridge. So he was visiting Modern Milkman, which is a business in Pudsey in Yorkshire, which is a constituency that the Conservatives were in charge of before the election and still are now. The reporter approached him and asked him, would you come on Good Morning Britain, Prime Minister, for an interview? And one of his aides, first of all, was heard mouthing, "Oh, for bleep's sake," and then the questions and the request continues, and eventually he returns into this massive walk-in fridge and doesn't come out until the moment has passed live on television. So if you think that your own country has an untrustworthy and rather dodgy leader, at least they don't hide in fridges to avoid public scrutiny. Merry Christmas, everyone.
I've heard of hiding in the closet and stuff, but the fridge was new. That was new. Right. Let's go with something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Mo Nassar.
He works a lot. He's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of these qualities.
Yeah, it's not a very wide array of options to pick from this week. So I have decided to flip it over and say that my Moratti of the week is Federico Chiesa for his absolutely disgraceful performance yesterday, which hopefully will convince people like a certain host of this certain Nerazzurri podcast that this little scum should be kept nowhere near Appiano, nowhere near the San Siro, at least not in black and blue, So really, what an awful player! What a disgusting player! And at such a young age, to be focusing so much on winning professional fouls rather than developing his own game. I mean, clearly the kid's got talent. Of course, we know this; it's undeniable. But just we're talking about being tone deaf and whatever. Of course, it's different to a much more serious topic than racism, but he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get no one's personally attacking you. like everybody wants the best for Chiesa because of his talent. You want him to achieve his potential, and he's just not going to get there by doing what, like, disgraceful performance yesterday. Absolutely awful. So I'm glad that,
Alex put out a tweet which I absolutely wet myself. That tweet of that guy jumping from, I think it's like, what, 10 meters.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chiesa, to me, he's an Olympic diver. I mean, that's what I see when I watch that guy.
He's Tom Daley with a slightly bigger nose.
Right. Before we get
started. I mean, I hope yesterday's performance finally settles it for all people who might have had any sort of, inkling or desire from Inter. That said, another Moratti, of course, was in the sort of flip reverse kind of way was Politano yesterday, because I think there is good business to be had with Fiorentina over the winter break. I'm looking at Castrovilli. So maybe that's the sort of business that we can do to bolster the midfield up. But yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's been a tough week. It's been a really long time since we've had a 3-match winless streak, and let's hope that when we speak after the new year, the first pod after that, there'll be lots of positivity to talk about.
Agreed. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Thanks for that, Mo. And also, I really do want to give a little Moratti also to Inter for finally putting the foot down. I wish they had done it previously when Corriere dello Sport put that Black Friday thing out, but it's clear that they were so tolerant that they were even letting that fly. But when they published this ridiculous letter sent from this fake letter from a supposed fan sent from an email address that doesn't exist, insulting and ripping Antonio Conte apart, they had enough. And I'm glad that they put their foot down. And I'm really, really glad that Antonio Conte said that, enough is enough. If you want respect, you have to show respect. And I think they did the right thing in boycotting the press conference. I think they should have probably just blocked Corriere dello Sport, but they did it to prove a broader point, and that is that people in the media have a responsibility, and you need to and you need to shoulder that responsibility wisely. So I think that was, for me, that was a good move from Inter's part. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Mina Rzouki for coming on, and also you, Will.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year. See you in 2020.
Christmas. Indeed. And also you, Mr. Alex Dono, Mr. Panettone.
Always a pleasure. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all.
Yeah, likewise. And I'm really looking forward to watching you eat as many panettone as humanly possible between now and the next episode. And put them
I'm
all
off to a nice start, Nima. So
yes, you are. And Mr. Mo Nassar, Mr. Positivity. I don't like this negative blue Mo. I like Mystic Happy Mo. The guy.
It's all there. It's just it's all good. It's all good. Happy festive season. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everyone. May Inter bells be playing in the corners of every home.
For goodness sakes!
We almost got there.
Did you have to ruin it? Right? No. I'll tell you what. I'll drop the Chiesa thing if you drop the Inter bell thing.
Christmas truce, isn't that lovely?
Yes, exactly. In the spirit of Christmas. Exactly.
Right. We can. Sorry. Just one last thing before we go. Now, we can just talk about Handanovic being at fault for the goal before we go. But anyway,
no, we cannot. No,
we cannot.
Time's run out.
Yes, sorry. Right. Thank you to everyone who's listened in 2019. Thanks to all our guests. And until next time, my name is Nima Tavallaey, wishing you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and 3 points, and sempre and solo Forza Inter.